LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the Gaza ceasefire will end if further hostages are not freed by noon on Saturday. Hamas said it was postponing the next release because it claims Israel broke agreed terms. Yotam Confino, the Middle East correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, told LBC both sides are playing games, including Netanyahu.
This is something that could derail everything, really, because if he's now expecting Hamas to release all hostages on Saturday, they could also rightfully say, well, that's not according to the ceasefire agreement, so we're not going to be a part of this.
A US special envoy on an unannounced visit to Russia has secured the release of American school teacher Mark Fogel, detained there since 2021. It's as President Trump looks for a peace negotiation to end Moscow's 3-year invasion of Ukraine. 11 councillors have been suspended from the Labour Party as it investigates a WhatsApp group which led to the sacking of a minister and an MP. It's understood they all sit on Tameside and Stockport councils. And Chelsea striker Sam Kerr has been cleared of racially aggravated harassment after calling a police officer stupid and white. A jury supported her claim that the comments made in January last year were not racist. In the city, the FTSE 100s closed up 9 points at 87.77. The pound buys $1.24 and €1.20. LBC weather mostly dry tonight with a few isolated showers and a low of -2. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work that way. Even a quick look at a message or firing off a quick reply affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8. Welcome to Tuesday's Cross Question with me, Iain Dale. Right, on the panel tonight, we have Gavin Esler, the broadcaster, journalist and author. He's the host of the podcast, This Is Not a Drill. I think it's a great title for a podcast. I'm very jealous. Rachel Johnson, LBC presenter, is here. Joe Robertson is Conservative MP for the Isle. Do you say the Isle of Wight East or Isle of Wight East? Just so I get
Isle of Wight East. But if the Isle of Wight on its own, then it has a the.
Yes.
Just to confuse you.
I do get that. And we have, and I'm girding my loins here because I've been mangling Tonia's name all day. Tonia Antoniazzi.
Perfetto, grazie.
She is Labour MP for Gower and chair of the Northern Ireland Select Committee. So they are all here to take your calls, your WhatsApp questions, your text questions, 0345 6060 973. And of course, you can watch us on Global Player.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
So many things you can ask our panel about tonight. Let's start off with David in Enfield. Hi, David.
Good evening, everyone. Does Trump's plan to develop Gaza mean the end of the two-state solution?
Gavin.
Has there ever been a beginning to the two-state solution? That's the question I would ask. Look, I heard you earlier talking about some of the things that you remember from a few years ago when there was hope of peace. I can trump you one sense, which is back in the 1990s, Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin met in Washington. I was a very new, very young reporter, and I thought, this could be it. You know, this is amazing. This is the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, an Israeli former general who's Prime Minister of Israel, Bill Clinton, and they're declaring peace, effectively, or hopes for peace, and there's a long way to go. They will go back to their to Palestine and also to Israel, and Yitzhak Rabin is shot by what is called an Israeli extremist or right-wing extremist, or some people would say a terrorist. And this is where we get into the thickets of it. And there was hope then. There is limited hope now, it seems to me. And I think one of the things that we have to be prepared for is Mr. Netanyahu's made it clear they want the rest of the hostages released. And the question is, are there any hostages really left to be released? Or are they in such terrible condition because we've seen how bad they are? And that's the kind of situation we're in. So I suspect that maybe I was very, very hopeful many years ago, and I've lost that hope.
Tonia.
I think it's sad to hear Gavin say that he's lost the hope, because we have to have hope, and it is a desperate, catastrophic situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. And all I can say is, we have to keep fighting, and looking forward for a two-state solution, because, those hostages have to be released. I don't know what state they're in, and I hope that they're still there, and I hope that they're in as good health as they can be. But we
saw the condition of the three that were released on Saturday, and they looked as if they'd been in Auschwitz, didn't they?
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking, and it's heartbreaking all around that we're now in this situation where if people like us are saying that there's no hope, then where do we go from here? Genuinely, where do we go from here? I can only hope that David Lammy, Keir Starmer, and all parties come together to be able to find a way forward as in government.
But do you not think that we have every right to be depressed when you look on the Israeli side, when Netanyahu clearly doesn't want a two-state solution? We know that, Hamas certainly don't. The Palestinian Authority, they seem to be a complete irrelevance now in many ways. They don't seem to be very vocal about anything. They don't have the leaders that, maybe that they need. There needs to be some sort of new, fresh leadership in Israel and indeed with the Palestinian Authority.
And there needs to be input from other countries, neighbouring countries, to be able to support and to work with them, because what's happening at the moment is unsustainable, and I don't know the answers. I wish I did, and I hope that we everybody around this table will agree that we just want there to be peace and a resolution, because you look at conflict in all parts of the world. How do people ever get over it? On the chair of the Northern Ireland Select Committee, we do a lot of work on legacy. We know that this is difficult, and this isn't going to go away for generations and generations, and that is why our role is really important as parliamentarians.
Joe Robertson.
So a two-state solution does seem an awfully long way away. Any solution feels an awfully long way or further away than it did back in the 1990s, perhaps. But I think we have to have hope. If we haven't got hope, we haven't got anything. The hostages must be released. And as Tonia has said, it requires, players from around the world, other countries to be involved and find a solution.
But the fact is, other countries have been involved over the past 18 months, since October the 7th, and they've had precious little impact on this conflict.
So we've got a ceasefire, we've got an agreement to release hostages. That must be honoured. Those hostages must be released. We must build forward from here. But plainly, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not going to be anything other than very, very, very difficult. But we must have hope.
Rachel?
Well, I think, sadly, that the two-state solution definitively was declared pretty much dead on the morning of October the 7th, 2024, wasn't 2023, I should say. And there are so many conditions that would have to obtain for both sides to agree to any kind of decision-making which involved two states now, given that Hamas is still running Gaza, given that Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want a state that still has within its 2017 charter the annihilation of the Jewish state within it. They cannot live with Gaza's run by terrorists on their doorsteps. It's not a sustainable state of affairs. Donald Trump came out with a plan. Of course, it's illegal in international law. Of course, none of the other Arab countries want to absorb 2 million Palestinian refugees who've obviously had refugee status for up to 5 generations. But I see tonight that 2,000 children from Gaza are going to go, isn't it? Is it Egypt or Jordan?
Jordan.
Into Jordan. Maybe there is the makings of a solution, if not a two-state solution here in what Donald Trump is talking about.
Well, let's just take a follow-up call here. John's in Hammersmith. John, what would you like to say?
Does the panel consider Russia and Iran's contribution to the Gaza situation to be significant?
Well, Russia condemned Hamas's attack on October the 7th, 2023, but Moscow has since got closer to Hamas and its foreign ministry, calling Trump's Gaza plan shocking last week, though it didn't rule it out totally. Who wants to come in on that?
I'll come in a little bit on that. I mean, for a start, Russia's in considerable difficulty in all kinds of ways. Now, the Trump presidency may prove to be good for Russia because it may solve the problem of Ukraine in a way that's in Russia's interest. But they just lost face in Syria. They've got economic problems. They're in great difficulties. Iran has not been neutralized, but is in real trouble. And actually, I would like to have some hope. So here's some hope. Nixon went to China, and he went to China because he was the most anti-communist president you could possibly imagine. And he got away with it because his own right wing were satisfied that he was doing something good for America. Trump could do something significant with Iran. He could really do something significant with Iran and not just bomb it. So the Iranians know this, and they know how difficult their situation is, and they have been humiliated too. So there's a strategic opening there because Trump wouldn't have any problems with the Israeli lobby, for instance, in the United States, or with Israel itself, if he found some way of negotiating with Iran. I'm not suggesting it's on his radar for a moment. He seems to be more interested in banning drinking straws or something. But this is a serious point that he has the credibility to do it. He has the energy to do it, but will he do it? And the other point is that peace in Northern Ireland came about in great measure because the United States was fully engaged. George Mitchell spent all his time in Northern Ireland, and I remember talking to him afterwards, and he said, I used to sit and listen to people talk at me for 5 hours about the indignities on their people. And at the very, very end, after doing this for about 6 months, I said, right, so what do we do about this? Now, there is nobody in the United States who's engaged in that way, unfortunately.
Rachel?
Well, we all know that Donald Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize, and what a left and a right for him if he can solve the Middle East crisis by turning Gaza into a kind of cross between Atlantic City and Coney Island.
By ethnic cleansing.
By voluntary removals of the Gazans, with perhaps, I think we don't know whether there's going to be a guaranteed right to return. His people walked it back within 24 hours of him saying there might be a right to return. But now, there isn't a clear plan, is there? We've just got the shape of an idea that's basically shaken the snow globe. So apply the same logic to Ukraine, Russia. The Munich Security Conference is starting on Friday, but we've also got the Red Army gathering in Moscow where all the BRICS leaders are going to be meeting. And you'll see, I don't want to rain on Gavin's parade talking about hope, but, if you get Iran, China, Turkey, you name it, all gathering to salute, kiss the ring and for
Turkey's
Putin.
Going. Turkey is a member of NATO.
No, Turkey is apparently going to, I heard on an Economist podcast.
Oh, it must be true then.
It must be true. They are apparently Erdogan is attending the Great Parade. So what we're seeing is a kind of another bloc forming in contradistinction to the idea of American hegemony and America's ability to solve all these global problems.
Joe?
Yeah, I think Gavin raised something interesting there with this idea of Trump being sort of having some sort of unique qualities. I think the thing with Trump, we can probably all agree for different reasons he's unique and can potentially be a game changer.
Should be a diplomat.
But I think Peter Mandelson's got that job. A game changer, and you're never quite sure how he can be, but he's one of these people that has the credibility, and if he doesn't have that credibility, he doesn't care, and could intervene in a way that delivers change that no other politician and no other American president could do. And I think with Trump, we have this sort of pattern again that no politician, certainly in this country, would go down, apart from a former prime minister in my party I can perhaps think of, where they say things which...
Sorry, I just shuddered.
They say things that cause shock to some and hero worshipping to others. And when the dust settles, actually what comes out of it is a rather interesting potential solution to something that no one ever saw. And I suspect the person who said it, in this case Trump, didn't necessarily see it from the outset. So I think there is a strange possibility that Trump could end up being very useful and helpful in breaking a deadlock that none of the rest of us can really see a solution to.
Tonia, does that fill you with hope?
Look, world leader relationships are key. And, as Gavin has said, and as we know, going in and listening and taking that time to be an active participant in a conversation that is going to lead to peace is not an easy job, as history has told us. And we have to learn the lessons of the past, the present, and then look to the future, because without having that kind of emotional intelligence, which you could argue that Trump doesn't have because of his behaviour.
You're being diplomatic as well. It's catching.
The thing is, we've got to work with him. If the Labour Party's in government, we have to work with all world leaders, and whether we like it or not, it's got to be for a positive outcome, because we ultimately want everybody in the world and in our own country to live a peaceful life and live their best life. So if you work from that basis, then, I don't think you go far wrong.
On that uplifting note, we'll go to a break. It's 16 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on Global Player. This is LBC.
18 minutes past 8 on LBC. Joe Robertson from the Conservatives, Tonia Antoniazzi is with us from Labour. Gavin Esler is a broadcaster, journalist and author, and Rachel Jordan. Now, there is a Rachel Jordan, isn't there? Didn't she used to run demos or something? Anyway, Rachel Johnson, LBC presenter. Right, let's quickly go on to a question to hide my embarrassment. It's Ed in Los Angeles. He says, do you think Trump is going to be even more damaging for the USA and the world than many of us feared he would be? How do you rate his first 3 weeks? Joe, you can be as undiplomatic as you like on this one.
I just feel whatever opinions one has on Trump, they usually turn out to be sort of incorrect, or you want to sort of re-qualify them. Look, he's got re-elected. He's got a mandate. He's only 3 weeks in, and he has a right to lead America for the next 4 years. Plainly some of the stuff he says is diplomatic language odd, and they're not words I would use, but he's a unique politician, and America didn't fall apart last time he was president, and I suspect it won't again.
Tonia.
Oh, we can't underestimate Trump. He's back in the White House. He's there saying some things that I may agree with, many things I don't agree with. But ultimately, I'm repeating myself, we've got to work with him. I mean, you have to question whether, sometimes he says things, he can't even remember what he said yesterday, but he has that power.
It's a tradition of US presidents nowadays, isn't it?
There was that good example of him chatting amicably to Barack Obama, wasn't there, in the church service? You know, they were having a good old chat, and you'd imagine they're the biggest enemies. You know, I think Trump is a lot more pragmatic and flexible than, you know, his exterior.
He seems to be one of these people that is quite happy to slag you off behind your back, but when it's a bit like some LBC listeners who'll slag me off on WhatsApp, and then they meet me on the train, so I didn't really mean that or something. Rachel.
I was going to say acidly and LBC presenters, but I can't have a beat.
Who are you referring
to? No, I'm absolutely not. No tales out of school. I think that Trump's first, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
3.
Has been an absolute roller coaster, highly enjoyable. He's got this ability to say the unsayable, but I'm a tennis player, and you can't believe he keeps going. It's like he's got a great big Prince tennis racket, and tennis players will know what I'm talking about. And the Prince racket has got an incredibly large sweet spot in the middle. And I think that what he's doing is everything that comes up, he returns the ball. And for the people who love Trump, his base, who aren't horrified and triggered by him, it just boings back over the net and hits exactly the right spot for them too. From, you know, just the little things. How he dealt with, I'm not going to deport Harry, he's got a terrible wife, you know, he's got enough problems. So it's like the whole world thinks that's quite a funny thing to say. I mean, cruel, but funny,
and true.
Hugely entertaining. He's got Caroline, yes, well, no comment. He's got Caroline Leavitt.
You want to run your podcast, don't you? Yeah.
He's got Caroline Leavitt, who looks exactly like the kind of front of house, White House press spokeswoman you want to see. And whenever she's on in the newsroom, even though she's on mute, every single pair of eyes in the newsroom, mainly male, swivels and just looks at her. So she looks like a White House press secretary. She sounds like a White House press secretary. And she's now doing like TikToks, which is what Trump has done today. I mean, he's got a very slick operation. And I think the question was about damage. Well, you know, he signed a huge number of executive orders. Mm-hmm. And I think the one I would single out, which I think he may have to walk back a tiny bit and row back, is USAID. Because I've got emails from people who run really good charities all over the world who already who are having to lay off staff, who are saving lives, who are demining, who are providing vaccinations, women, and providing education for girls in Afghanistan. And so, you know, let's just keep, you know. I'm not decided.
Before we go to Gavin, do you want to reveal who your celebrity tennis partner is?
I've got so many. I play with Andrew Castle.
Andrew Castle.
Andrew Castle with David Cameron.
Yeah, David
Cameron.
Cameron.
I revealed that in my book, so I better reveal that too.
Gavin.
Well, you know, in the kind of Project 2025 lingo, he's flooded the zone. He's done a lot of things, and it's absolutely extraordinary. And in some ways, he might seem kind of fearless. You know, who's going to stop him? It's not the Supreme Court. It's certainly not Congress. It's not the Democratic Party. Is it some kind of individuals? Is it the press? I don't think so. So I've been thinking to go to the root of this question. What could Donald Trump be frightened of? What does he fear? And he clearly feels some
germs.
Kind of personal thing, your germs. I think the one thing he possibly fears is the bond market. I think, you know, again, James Carville once said, the Clinton advisor said, you know, when I die, I'm going to be reincarnated as a bond market because you can scare the heck out of everybody. Yeah. He's frightened of the bond market because if tariffs work politically for him, that's okay, but they won't work, I don't think, economically. Americans will pay more, inflation will go up, cars going backwards and forwards to Canada will cause all kinds of problems, there will be all kinds of disruptions. So the nitty-gritty of the stuff that he doesn't like thinking about may catch him out, and that may spook the markets in various ways. May not. I mean, I'm not, you know, a gambler on the markets, but I would suggest to you that's what he cares about, and that's where he could come unstuck.
Michael says, Iain, did you just say that Meghan is a terrible wife? How about Andrew? Would he fit your criteria? Poor judgment from you, very poor. Well, as far as I know, Prince Andrew is not a wife to anybody, but I'm not sure he'd make a very good husband either. Right, let's go to Tony in Horsham. Tony, what would you like to ask?
Good evening. do those MPs who oppose a quick passing of the assisted dying bill support the long, slow and agonised deaths of the terminally ill?
What's nice? Impartial way to put a question, I guess. Kim Leadbeater, the backbench Labour MP who's put forward this bill, has suggested today that rather than a judge, a panel of experts would be asked to verify that somebody seeking an assisted death is not being coerced into doing so. Well, let's ask the two MPs on the panel, because you've both got to make this decision as to whether to back this bill. It's not a party political thing at all. Have you come to a conclusion, Tonia?
I mean, I've done a lot of work on the assisted dying. The topic of assisted dying led to Westminster Hall debates for the Petitions Committee. I'm deeply involved. My mother happens to be very unwell at the moment, and it's something that I've always thought very deeply about since losing my father 13 years ago. Now, the situation that we're in is that I do have very close friends in my party, and not, who are of opposing views to me. But I know what I want, and I feel that, well, in fact, one of the conversations just before I was coming here was with my very good friend, Ruth Jones, and she actually said, well, it happens anyway, Tonia.
What, from Gavin and Stacey?
She's the Member of Parliament for Newport West, and it's
Sorry,
what
Ruth.
a cracking name. Absolutely brilliant. I shouldn't be calling her out now, because, it's clear we have completely different views on this. But she said, it happens anyway. So, but I'm just like, that pain that people are in at the end of their life is something that, it'll always stay with me. I don't want it for myself. I don't want it for my mother. I just feel that we have to be having these difficult conversations. And that's why I'm pleased at committee stage of this bill passing through Parliament. Whether it passes or not at the end, I think I'll be happy that Parliament has done its job.
What about this idea, though, that a panel of experts should replace a High Court judge?
I think, personally, from a pro-assisted dying perspective, which people would be surprised that I have, I think that's a better thing. I think it's better than a judge. I actually would give me more confidence in the system to have that. And, of course, it is up to Kim, and it's up to the committee, it's up to the people sitting there discussing it and debating it, that's the right way forward. That's how it works.
Have you had colleagues say to you, though, that, well, I'm on your side, Tonia, but this is too far, and at third reading, I was going to vote in favour of this, but I'm not going to anymore?
Yeah, but some have gone the other way and
have
said,
they?
Yeah. Because think, if you've got a social worker, if you've got people that know the situation, that are involved in healthcare, surely that's better than a judge literally deciding on whether you can end your life or not.
True.
So I found it a very difficult thing to vote on the first time round, and actually I did something that's probably rather unusual, which is I made my mind up in the chamber during the debate, having heard actually what I thought was a very respectful debate, and obviously hugely helped by the fact that none of the parties took a line on it, and rightly so. And I was persuaded in that debate to vote against assisted dying. I thought some of the powerful speeches, people like Diane Abbott made a very, very powerful speech where she talked about inequality, poverty, ethnicity playing a role. The problem is, if you give people a choice whether to end their life, and I do have obviously a huge amount of sympathy with that, relief of pain and suffering, you also automatically give everyone else the choice to have to choose to live. So it's not a neutral act that only gives choice on one side, because if you are in the last 6 months of life and you know there is an option and you have a choice, I think it changes the way we view life and death culturally in this country in ways that we probably haven't fully explored. I'm not fundamentally against assisted dying, but I think at this time, in a way that it's brought through a backbench bill that hasn't had a huge amount of reading time, and that is not a criticism of Kim Leadbeater or anyone else who supported it.
But Tony thinks that you, by saying that, in his words, support the slow and agonising deaths of the terminally ill.
I don't see it like that, and I think the debate has been quite respectful. I think it's absolutely right and fair and okay to disagree on it. I think it's not the case that there is a right answer and there is a wrong answer. So just 3 weeks ago, I was invited by my local hospice with my neighbouring MP, who's the Labour side, and the two of us met with staff in the hospice and heard views. And even there, with those working in palliative care, there were different views. There is no right, there is no wrong.
Right, if you two can be a little bit brief on this, because we have to go to the news, as Rachel, as a presenter, you understand.
I do. Very quickly, I think that you've both made good points, Tonia and Joe. I think that I approve of the bill. I think it's a good piece of legislation. I think Kim Leadbeater has presented it really well. And I think that actually it's not binary. I think it's not a question of being for or against assisted dying, which is why I think the panel system appeals to me, because each individual case is different. I think of the old people that I have loved who I've watched die. And in some cases, I would never have thought that assisted dying was an option for them. In others, I think it has been. And I think their families would agree, and I think they would agree. So I think with the panel system, where each case is taken on its merits with honesty and, POAs as applied when necessary, I think it is the way forward.
Gavin?
Very briefly, I think I should say that this was a great moment for Parliament. I really was very respectful of the way in which all MPs, including Joe and Tonia, conducted themselves on this. I think it's a very difficult issue. For me personally, I would wish to have the right to choose, but I find it very difficult to understand how you can frame that in a way that there's no problems. And ultimately, I think judges do enough. I think a panel of experts would be better.
Well, I think that was one of the arguments used. Well, this will bung up the courts. I'm not sure it would, given that there aren't likely to be more than a few hundred each year, apparently. Anyway, thank you very much for your contributions. We'll come to some more subjects in a moment. If you'd like to ask a question to the panel, 0345 6060 973. It's 8:32. News headlines on LBC with Daryl Jackson.
Israel's Prime Minister has threatened to end the Gaza ceasefire agreement, giving Hamas an ultimatum. Benjamin Netanyahu says if further hostages aren't freed by noon on Saturday, intense fighting will resume. 11 Labour councillors in Greater Manchester have been suspended over a WhatsApp group where offensive messages were shared. They reportedly include councillor Alison Gwynn, whose husband was sacked as Health Minister on Saturday. Former Home Secretary James Cleverly has told LBC the assisted dying bill should be dropped as a private member's bill so it can be given proper scrutiny. Speaking on Tonight with Andrew Marr, he believes the legislation is being rushed through Parliament. LBC weather mostly dry tonight with a few isolated showers and a low of -2.
This is LBC. leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:35 on LBC. Tonia Antoniazzi is with us, Labour MP for Gower. Thank you, Rachel Johnson, LBC presenter and host of the, is it award-winning or yet to be award-winning podcast, Difficult Women?
If you say so.
Well, it does deserve to be award-winning because it's really, really good.
Thank you.
You are an amazing interviewer, if I may say so.
Well, thank you, Ian. So are you.
Not quite as good as Gavin, but...
So are you.
Gavin Esler, broadcaster, journalist and host of the This Is Not a Drill podcast, and Joe Robertson, who as yet I don't think has a podcast, but time will tell, Conservative MP for Isle of Wight East. Right, Gary is in Maidenhead. He has texted this question. How can calling someone stupid and white not be racist? Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, or what Gary's talking about, the Chelsea women's footballer Sam Kerr has apologised this evening for expressing myself poorly on what was a traumatic evening after she was found not guilty of causing racially aggravated harassment of a Metropolitan Police officer she called stupid and white in January 2023. Ms Kerr also says she did not intend to insult or harm anyone. Rachel.
I'm just catching up with this. I suppose this. I don't know what colour Sam Kerr is.
She is, I think, half Filipino and half something else, which somebody in my ear is going to tell me. But
okay, because
Indian.
that's relevant here, isn't it? Because a white player is unlikely to say, Tonia, you played rugby. It's unlikely for somebody on the opposing team to sledge you by calling you stupid and white, isn't it? So coming from Sam Kerr, this was intended to be a racial slur, but it's a pretty unusual one. But I suppose we have to say what sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If it would be racist for a white player to call her stupid and mixed race, and that definitely sounds racist, doesn't it? We have to accept that it was racist.
But there are some people who say it's impossible to be racist against a white person.
Because it's not a minority. And not a protected
characteristic. Except it is if you're in a country where it is a minority.
Well, I think if you're going to go down that identity politics route, which she obviously was, just because we are in a white majority country, I don't think you can get away with it on that basis, I'm afraid. Sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander.
Tonia, if someone had said to you, you're stupid and Welsh, would you regard that as a sort of pseudo-racist insult?
I think it depends how hurt I'm going to feel by you calling me stupid and Welsh.
I wasn't, by the way.
I know, but I think, when she has said that she expressed herself poorly, she definitely did express herself poorly. And as Rachel has said, is it accepted the other way? Well, hang on a minute. She is in a minority, and she has a protected characteristic. Therefore, there should be that is why she should know better not to make those comments. But are we going to go down this identity politics route? Because we can go down it on every topic, can't we? At the moment, it feels like it's kind of like I'm going to play this one off against this one on the trans debate, or on kind of who's going to be the most woke. It's not a competition, right? We are literally, we've got to be sensible. Things have got to be measured, and I don't think there's any need for Gary in Maidenhead really to be offended by her calling somebody stupid and white, but I also think that Sam will probably take it on the chin. It's not acceptable if somebody had done the exact to her. It's not acceptable either way.
Can I just say I agree? One line. As soon as you play the race card, you must have lost the match or the game, right? Because that's the card she was playing, and I think anyone who plays the race card is on the back foot, in my view. And I think that people should be judged by what they do, not the colour of their skin, the content of the character.
But she was found not guilty.
Yes, I know, but we're talking about whether she should have said it in the first place.
What would have happened? If she'd been found guilty, what would have happened? It just makes a nonsense of a racially aggravated crime. It's just, to me, Sam has apologised. She shouldn't have done it. And if that was the other way round, they shouldn't have done it either.
Gavin.
Well, it was a daft thing to say, but to go back to your question, if somebody said I was stupid and Scottish, I'd say, well, you're obviously half right. I mean,
No.
No, I mean, come on.
So you're not Scottish?
I am very Scottish. And I'm also, if they said I was thrawn and Scottish, I would say, which means very stubborn, they'd be completely right. Look, this is a stupid thing to say, and to call somebody stupid is a bad thing. It's the thing that children do. And to make race an issue out of something which was just some irritable person is just ridiculous.
Okay, Joe?
I think that she was found not to have, what she said was found not to have amounted to racially aggravated harassment. That's a very different question to, was it racially inappropriate? Was it a racial slur? Was it insulting? Those are different questions. So I can see how it could be found, and she was found not guilty of racially aggravated harassment, but it was arguably a race-based insult, albeit, I would say, from my position, a low-level one.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary, for your question. Let's go to Shuvik in Eltham. Hello, Shuvik.
Hello, Ian. Yes, I'd like to ask the panel, I'm concerned about new literacy and numeracy requirements. Should all apprentices be required to learn English and maths up to at least GCSE or level 2? I think they should.
Well, under new guidance from the government, employers taking on adult apprentices will now be able to choose whether those they are offering apprenticeships to have to have English and maths qualifications or not. I'm not quite sure what the current situation is. Tonia?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Like, my background's in teaching, and I've seen kids, and well, actually friends of mine, absolutely battle to get their GCSE in maths and English. And that doesn't mean that they're rubbish at maths and English. It means that they're not performing in an exam. And I think this is a good move that adults can just say, because as you are an adult, as you grow up, you gain skills every year. Whatever job that you're in, you're gaining skills life gives you every day. So there are some things that are more important at the end of the day than English and maths. A basic level of English and maths, yes, but does that have to be a certain grade? And I think personally, depending on the apprenticeship, depending on the skills that are needed for the job, depending on your life experience, that no, they're not always necessarily required.
Joe?
Yeah, I broadly agree with that. I mean, I think English and maths, people get better at all through their lives, actually, particularly maths.
Yeah.
Some people can be, particularly, again, maths can be quite capable, but not necessarily able to show that through exams.
Can I butt in? Sorry.
Of course you can.
I've actually got a friend who we were at university together. She was still, while doing a teacher training, trying to get her C at GCSE maths. Do you know what she does now? She's in charge of maths in a secondary school.
How frightening.
But I kid you not, because she understood how difficult and the battles that she had to overcome. It wasn't that she was stupid, it was maybe she didn't get on with the teacher, maybe it was the skills that she was being taught.
The Daily Mail will be on the phone in a minute, wanted to know who this teacher is.
My lips are sealed, but I'm telling you now, you've got to think about that.
Gavin?
Well, I think it depends, obviously. I mean, employers know what they want, and they know whether people need to add up and need to speak the Queen's English, right? The King's English, I should say. Employers know all this, and actually so do people who want certain jobs. So in some cases, to know maths reasonably well is really important. The employer would know it. In other cases, it's probably not that important at all.
Rachel, were you good at English and maths?
Well, I think it's a kind of another evidence of this cookie-cutter approach to education, which I don't really like. My first job was with the FT. I struggled with O-level maths. I don't think I still can't do a percentage. Don't tell anybody. I mean, thank gosh for ChatGPT. I mean, so I just think that there are other skills and competences that I think that employers might value more than assessing somebody's level in English and maths. I hate this word. Oracy.
I've never heard it until
I know, it's terrible. I think it's a made-up word.
Yeah.
It's banned. It's a banned
Definitely
word.
banned.
But, communication skills.
Yeah.
Interpersonal skills.
Language skills.
people know how to. They have to know how to use a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, those are three things that employers need.
Taking yourself out of your comfort zone, that's something that you need. Absolutely.
And
learning.
you've done that tonight by coming on this program.
I know. There's a first for everything, isn't there?
I can't believe we haven't had you on before, to be honest.
There
But
you go,
there
you've been
we
missing
are.
out.
Listen, Jackie Smith, the Apprenticeships Minister, will be joining me on the programme tomorrow night from 9 for an hour to take your calls. So you can, Shuvik, you can call back and ask her that question yourself if you'd like to. Right, thank you very much indeed, Shuvik. We'll take more of your calls in a moment, including our long-awaited fun question at the end of the programme, which Tonia is really looking forward to. It's 8:45.
This is LBC. This Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Well, we learnt in the break that Rachel and I have even more in common than we thought. We both got grade C at O-level maths.
I was lucky to scrape a C.
I was quite proud of it, to be honest. Right, we have with us Rachel Johnson, Joe Robertson, Gavin Esler and Tonia Antoniazzi. Let's go to Polly, who says, should Kemi Badenoch be channeling Margaret Thatcher a bit more to win over the right in this country? And, of course, today is 50 years since Margaret Thatcher became leader of the Conservative Party, something we will either be celebrating or commiserating over after 9 o'clock on the programme. We want to get your views on whether she was a positive or a negative for the United Kingdom. Joe?
Should Kemi be channeling her inner Margaret Thatcher? I mean, I think she is. I think there are actually some similarities between Kemi and Margaret Thatcher, certainly in style. I saw Kemi a little bit earlier because there was a gathering to mark the 50 years since Margaret Thatcher became leader of the Conservative Party. And I think, Margaret Thatcher was a very straight-speaking person. She said what she believed, she said what she thought, and I definitely see that in Kemi. So I think she's already channeling her inner Thatcher.
What do you think she can learn from her? Because 1975 was a very different time. You didn't have sort of 24/7 media. Didn't have social media. And Margaret Thatcher, in her first 2 years, she didn't really have any new policies. And she was attacked for that. Kemi Badenoch's been leader of the Conservative Party for just over 100 days and is already getting attacked for having no policies. What can she learn from the way Margaret Thatcher handled that sort of thing?
So I think Kemi's actually got a harder job than even Margaret Thatcher had in some ways because of the scale of defeat at the general election. So Kemi has taken over a party, my party, that had its biggest defeat in 200 years. And just on the parliamentary arithmetic, that makes it an incredibly hard job to win the next election. Probably the only person that's done or had the job that Kemi's got is William Hague, of course, who took over in 97 when we also suffered a huge defeat. I think the country was in a very different place when Margaret Thatcher took over. But I think it's about connecting with people in plain language, saying what you think, and building together a narrative. Yeah, Margaret Thatcher did come to be seen as someone who had a very forceful agenda. But that didn't come overnight. That didn't come on day one. And in fact, part of it was shaped during her period in government. And I think Thatcher, the patriot, was bound up with her strong response to Argentina in the Falklands War, and she was already elected by that point. So early days of Margaret Thatcher, it was tough. It was tough. A lot of people said she wouldn't last, and they were wrong.
Gavin Esler, did you interview Margaret Thatcher?
I did, yes. I can tell you very funny stories about it, but I'm going to tell you somewhere else. Because it involves another journalist in another channel. Oh. But anyway. Okay.
I can't imagine who.
Well, you'll find out later, but I can't possibly say. Look, I think Kemi Badenoch definitely should channel Margaret Thatcher, because after all, Margaret Thatcher got the best deal for any major European country out of the European Union. And all Kemi Badenoch should do is say, we would replicate that deal. We'd willingly take it back. But of course it won't happen. But there's just a thought.
You did very well. 51 minutes into the hour.
51
minutes.
Yeah, well,
it's better than last time.
It was 2 minutes last time, wasn't it? Good evening.
Rachel.
I think she should channel Margaret Thatcher, because everybody...
Boris Johnson?
Kemi Badenoch should channel Margaret Thatcher, because everybody knew who Margaret Thatcher was and what she was for, and more importantly, she knew who she was and what she was for. And it was the thrifty housewife is a really brilliant paradigm for a leader in a country where people have to cut their cloth, that she wants growth. She's on the side of this market trader. Her father was a grocer. She had such a good backstory. It carried her all the way through. It's 50 years, I think, to the day since she became leader. And Kemi actually tweeted a picture of Kemi with Margaret Thatcher. And I think that's...
We can all do that.
I can't. I've had dinner with her once. I met her twice, but I don't have a selfie with her. I mean, good Kemi. So Kemi, I think Kemi's on board the bus. Iain. So are you being served suddenly?
Only in your mind.
Now I've lost my thread.
Thank God. Let's go to Tonia.
Look, for me, I don't think it matters what party you're in to be a forthright, outspoken woman. It'll get you far, as far as I'm concerned. Should she be channeling her inner Margaret Thatcher? Well, she's got to find some tactics to kind of scrape her way back from what was disastrous election for the Tories, and also she's got to fight off the reform vote, as we do as well. But I grew up in Llanelli, overlooking Dewport Steelworks. Margaret Thatcher was known as Margaret Thatcher, the milk snatcher, not the child snatcher, take that back. And the impact that the mining strikes and the steelworks closing down had on my community, where I saw people, fighting in school over it. My father was a deputy head. It really did have a huge impact on people's lives, and I'll never
blame
forget
Arthur Scargill for that, not Margaret Thatcher.
Look, we can get into a whole other programme about that. It's the legacy of Margaret Thatcher in South Wales, and for us, it's a really difficult one. But as Gavin has been very positive about her positivity around Europe, I would actually like to thank her for that.
Okay. David is in Ventnor on the Isle of Wight. David, very good evening. What would you like to ask?
Good evening.
Is devolution beneficial for all areas of the country?
Now, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight are one of the six English regions being fast-tracked in the devolution priority programme, which will see smaller district councils replaced with newer, larger councils for areas with at least 500,000 people living in them, and also directly elected mayors, which will be voted on in May 2026. Well, Ventnor is in your constituency, so a constituent of yours, Joe. What do you think of these devolution proposals?
So I'm sceptical of devolution as a national policy, and I think it's being oversold as sort of pushing money out into the regions. Okay, so powers will be pushed down and the budget will go with those powers, but those things that are being pushed down will still have to be paid for. So I don't see where the new money is. If you said to a child, I'm not going to, Dad's not going to buy you a Christmas present, he's just going to give you money instead. Oh, that's new money. No, then you have to go and buy your own present. For the Isle of Wight, my problem is that the devolution proposal is a shared mayor with Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and the Isle of Wight may lose its own local authority. That sounds to me as much centralisation as it is devolution. A mayor based in Winchester is not devolving powers to the town hall on the Isle of Wight. I think it is a standard national policy that doesn't work for the island. I think it's confused, and I think it doesn't take us any further. Our population makes up 7% of the combined Hampshire-Isle of Wight area. We will be dominated by Hampshire. Doesn't take us any further than where we are now. If we have to have a mayor, and I'm not sure whether the government are forcing us, but if we do, let's have a mayor for the Isle of Wight where we can negotiate our own unique circumstances as a populated island in England, with special funding that can't be raided by a larger county to the north of us.
Tonia, it does seem a bit odd that Hampshire would dominate the Isle of Wight. OK, it's kind of adjacent, but as Joe says, Winchester would have very little in common with the Isle of Wight. I don't know where these proposals came from, and obviously you can't comment on this individual one, but as a generality, it does seem barking mad.
Well, I think, look, I'm Welsh, it's no secret. We have devolved government, I'm chair of the Northern Ireland Select Committee, another devolved government, and there are always issues. It is better to have power closer to the people, so I believe in devolution. However, I do know and see firsthand the issues over not thinking things through. I mean, in Wales, we've got 22 local authorities and a Senedd, which is getting bigger. Is that right? No, I don't think it is, because we need to look about how we actually spend our money smarter in devolved countries. And I think that's very, the same case, because if we're having metro mayors and putting places together, really the Isle of Wight should be thinking about, well, what are we doing in Ynys in North Wales? What are we thinking about? What does it look like somewhere else? And we've got to learn those lessons. You just can't do it. People should have power closer to them, yes, but we've got to be very thoughtful. Look, Rachel and her team should be thinking, well, how much is it going to cost? What is it going to look like? And what benefits?
Oh, I thought you meant this, Rachel.
I thought you...
Oh, sorry, Rachel. I meant...
I'm definitely not from accounts after you've heard about my maths O-level.
I think we can all go along with that.
That identity point, because it's a good one. Obviously, Wales as a country, far bigger than the local authorities that are now getting devolution, but there is a shared identity. It's a nation, and people know when they're in Wales and whether they're not. With the Isle of Wight, there is an understandable identity. We know whether we're on the Isle of Wight or not. We have our own identity. That's where the mayor negotiation should be. There isn't a Hampshire and Isle of Wight identity. People in Hampshire will feel...
What are Isle of Wight people known as? Whiteys?
Islanders. Yeah, Corkheads, if they've been there for several generations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, we're running out of time. Gavin?
Very, very briefly, I'm in favour broadly of devolution. Greater Manchester and West Midlands together, the two Andys, Burnham and Street, agreed they wanted more power, but I see there are identity questions, and the Isle of Wight is obviously one of them.
No, I'm completely against devolution. I think it's a complete waste of money. Imagine Elon Musk and Donald Trump listening to your conversation about the Isle of Wight vis-a-vis
California's got
Hampshire.
devolution.
It's a massive waste of money. and all these. It's just endless jobs for local mayors who I don't know what they do.
Sorry, Rachel, when you say Trump and the Isle of Wight, we're not for sale, okay?
You wait.
Right, fun question from Sylvia in Oxford. If you could retrain to do an apprenticeship in one skill and make that your life's work, what would it be? Gavin?
Well, I'm married to a wonderful musician, Nana Phoebe. I've got a brother-in-law who's a great composer. I would play the piano, and I'd really, really put them in the shade. That would be it. I'd be absolutely
wonderful.
wonderful.
I would happily learn with you, because in my school, only girls were allowed to play the piano, and this was a state comprehensive. Rachel?
I'd retrain as a plumber. The amount of money I have spent on no rodding jokes, Ian, and the amount of money I have spent
I wasn't going there.
Just having my kitchen sink unblocked. And I'm sure it's a very simple procedure, and they do it in about a second, and they charge about £400.
What's the name of the thing inside the toilet that when you flush?
The ball cock.
That's the one. Tonia.
You are awful.
I hope to retire to Italy, hopefully to a vineyard, so I would be taking up my training as a vintner.
Have you ever lived in Italy?
Yeah, well, I studied in Italy, played rugby in Italy as part of my degree.
You played rugby in Italy?
I did, yes.
You tell us that when we're already gone past 9 o'clock. We're having you back very soon, Joe.
So I'm quite a keen DIYer, lifelong DIYer. So I'd like to actually, get some proper skills through a carpentry apprentice. Yeah.
Well, that was Tuesday's edition of Carry On Cross Question. Thank you to all of the panel for joining us. We'll have another one along tomorrow. And on that panel, we have the Labour MP and Energy Minister, Miata Fahnbulleh, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister, Sir Ranil Jayawardena, entrepreneur and former TV dragon, Piers Linney, and the academic and political commentator, Professor Anand Menon. So they'll be with me from 8 o'clock tomorrow. Now, in the next hour, we are going to mark the 50th anniversary of Margaret Thatcher being elected leader of the Conservative Party. That happened on February the 11th, 1975. I have a very vivid memory of that day. I remember as, I think I was 11, 12, running upstairs to tell my grandmother, who was ill in bed, that Margaret Thatcher had become leader of the Conservative Party. She burst into tears. Now, insert your own joke here, I guess. And later she told me why. And it was because she could never imagine a woman leading a political party. Now, she lived to see Margaret Thatcher become Prime Minister and change the face of this country for good or for ill. That's my question to you in the next hour. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From